It was on our horizon for months. We thought it would never get here. And then suddenly, we were on our way. We thought summer had given us a miss, and suddenly the sun was here as well. And then we were immersed in it. The sights, the sounds, the summer of tennis, Melbourne came alive. And we had so much to look forward to, and we couldn't wait to get there. It all came in a rush. And suddenly, we were in it, around it, and living it, and immersed in it. Welcome to this Australian Open Life. We tell stories. Our story is tennis. And let's relive the story of the history-making moment that Ash Barty became the Australian Open Women's Singles Champion. G'day, welcome to this standalone special episode of This Australian Open Life. You're listening to The Bloke Who Walks. We're based in Melbourne, Australia, and this is a standalone retrospective episode of This Australian Open Life. We've decided to take a deep breath. Hope you enjoyed that very quick little montage. Two in a row, 190 seconds trying to sum up exactly what happened over 4.5 weeks of tennis in Melbourne, Australia, and various regional lead-up tournaments, which we've also covered. And the moment that Ash Barty broke one of the longest droughts in women's tennis, becoming the Australian Open champion for 2022. And it didn't stop there, of course. The Special Ks came from nowhere. Literally, figuratively, and metaphorically, they came from nowhere to claim the title of men's doubles champions. The first time there was an All-Australian final since 1980. Can you believe it? So I've given myself about two minutes, which is probably now about 90 seconds. I want to go through quickly what you can expect in this episode, and you'll see on the screen, for those listening to the podcast, on the screen is the world's slowest camera movement down Tanderrum Bridge. I think I got that name right. The bridge that leads to Melbourne Park, the Australian Open. So with this retrospective episode, we want to try and tie in a few themes to show that, yes, it's all over. Barricades are going back up. It is lock up, and they're striking all the sets, taking down all the grandstands, the scaffolding, all the advertising, the fake fountain in Garden Square, they've pulled the plug, it's gone silent and dry, they're tipping out the water, they're packing up the deck chairs, and I thought it'd be somewhat of a fun idea. This footage was filmed in very late December, I'm pretty sure. And I just thought it'd be fun I want to show how easy it is to walk from Melbourne Park to the centre of Melbourne. If you're overseas, this channel, for those that listen and watch regularly, you'll know that this channel is all about showcasing Melbourne, showcasing the Australian Open, the blend of how the city integrates into the lifestyle of the city and how easy it is to get there if you're a visitor. So while the camera moves painfully, slowly from Melbourne Park along the Yarra River back to Flinders St Station, the centre of the city, and I know I'm taking up your time, I'm not going through this very quickly, but I just want to outline, it'll be in the details for this episode down below. I'm going to give you an outline of what we're going to cover during this episode. We've got about 50 minutes to get through all this. Hopefully it won't be any longer, but the topics that I want to cover in this retrospective episode, in no particular order, the title of the topics are Showcase. We're going to do a review of all the episodes. Second, I'm going to talk about the style of the content in each episode, as well as the podcast. We're going to take a fairly long lens, a long look into an editorial review of the episodes. Then flipping over the page, going to have a chat about timeliness of the presentation of the footage, the coverage. Going to go a bit existential with a review of being there. Being there, what does that mean? Then we're going to take something fairly a little bit more relatable. Sporting culture review. We're going to dip into a quick review of the podcast episodes. We're going to have a chat about the global reach of this Australian Open life, and this might surprise you. Where we get to in the world. Over the last 5 weeks, we've had a lot of people tuning in from a lot of different places around the world, and we want to thank those people, and we want to let them know that we know you're out there. Next week, it's just going to go through the various topics of the episodes and the playlists, the way they were structured, and then we're actually going to review the playlists. And finally, once we get there, and hopefully you're still listening by then, and if you're not, that's okay, because I'll tell you why that's okay right at the end of this introduction. And again, I apologise that it's so long, but at the same time, I think it's important. I'll just postpone those thoughts on why it's important. We'll finish off this list. What next? That is what we're going to finish off with. What next? What next for this Australian Open life? If you've been enjoying listening and watching, listening, or only watching or only listening in the podcast, what's next? What are we going to do with ourselves until the next Australian Open comes around in January 2023, in 12 months' time? And then if there's any time left at all, if we've gone over and it's not too long, there it is on the screen. Now, we're just going to dip into my random thoughts as a producer of this Australian Open life, which will just be a bit of a ramble, and you're probably sitting there thinking, if you've listened to these commentaries before, you're probably thinking, well, that's all this guy does is ramble. There doesn't seem to be much order to all this, but that's just the way we roll. So to finish off this introduction, what I thought was a really good way to finish off what's been an amazing finale to this 2022 Australian Open was we deliberately filmed this very extensive footage between Melbourne Park and Flinders St Station to demonstrate this is one of the things we like to do. Is it's not just about the tennis and the courts and the matches and the players and the officials and the how to get in. We want to give you a sense of if you're a visitor from overseas and you've got this dream about getting to Melbourne, you're not sure if you can go or if it's worth it. Maybe this type of footage, which really it's not going to have any tennis in it, to be quite truthful. We're not going to be talking about any players or matches or anything, but this is to help you kick those dreams along. That hopefully this might be one of the things which helps push you into ticking that box, paying for that ticket, flying to this city, whether it's next year, in 5 years or 10 years if you're a little kid, and hello to you if you are, that you're dreaming of coming to the Australian Open, just like Daniel Medvedev, dreaming of playing at big tournaments like this. Well, the other thing is that we just love Melbourne, and this episode is a bit of a love letter to Melbourne because we love showing it off. It's not just about the tennis, it's also about Melbourne. So we'll finish off the intro there. What you're going to be seeing is 30-second panoramic shots at various points along the banks of the Yarra River, combined with shots of a very idle ferry waiting for passengers. That passenger might be you. And the camera continuing to slowly move down that walk from Melbourne Park to the banks of the Yarra. You're listening to The Bloke Who Walks. It's the retrospective episode on this Australian Open life. The Australian Open has just finished. We tell stories, and our story is tennis. And after we come back from this break, we're going to tell the story of this Australian Open life and the 2022 Australian Open. So for now, we're going to take a short break. Enjoy the sights, sounds, summer of Ash Barty, women's singles Australian Open champion. G'day, welcome back to this Australian Open Life. We really appreciate you taking time out of, you should be working or doing your homework or walking the dog, or cooking the dinner, but you're taking time out of your busy day to roll through a showcase. This particular topic is titled. So we just want to, we've been given some really really grateful for some of the feedback we've been getting. We've got some really dedicated people in the audience, whether you're watching the footage on our platform. I don't want to say the word YouTube because I'm trying to set us apart. If you're a listener on the podcast, we've had some really fantastic feedback about that we're presenting some really relatable footage and vision of the Australian Open and the lead-up tournaments. But in all honesty, one of the reasons so much effort has gone into producing this type of content is we just want to showcase Melbourne. We want to showcase the events, the culture, and the sporting culture, because when you live in a place like Melbourne, it just never stops. We know how lucky we are. It goes, we start January with the Open, and then all of a sudden it's the footy season, and then all of a sudden it's the Grand Prix, and then all of a sudden it's something else, and then all of a sudden there's concerts, and then all of a sudden it's the footy finals, and then all of a sudden it's the State of Origin comes to town. And it's just one thing after another. It's just one sporting mega event after the other. And that's what's one of the great things about living in Melbourne. And as you'll hopefully see from these panoramic shots, that there's, if you're going to walk through our city and it's all around you, basically, although on the day that we filmed this, unfortunately, mostly what was around us was the C word, the COVID word. And of course, the showcase, the aim of this Australian Open Life was to showcase the Australian Open and just try and give people a sense. Our outlook is international. We don't need to sell Melbourne to those that live here or live in Australia. We want to sell it and give a sense of it to people overseas who've never been here, or perhaps you were here 10 or 20 years ago, and boy, hasn't the city changed so much in the last 20 years, and it's still changing, and it's going to keep changing, and that's what we want to show off. So it's really pleasing to know that so many people have enjoyed watching a lot of the content, and I hope I remember at the end of this episode to fill you in on a few stats. So that's it for the showcase. I'm going to break it up and make it easy on the listener and the viewer, so you don't have to listen to huge long chunks of me rambling, and we're going to break it up just to make it interesting. So enjoy the sights, sounds, summer of women's singles champion Ash Barty.
Kia, movement that inspires. We are not here on this planet to close our eyes to the moon.
Unless you wanted to drop stuff off in the car.
Welcome back to this Australian Open Life. It's the retrospective episode, and the next topic to tackle in retrospect is just a review of the episodes, what worked and what didn't. And I'm going to put my hand up here. This episode is largely for my benefit. I just would like to hear myself saying these things out loud, taking a conscious review of what's been produced for the benefit of those that are might be interested. So we tried a lot of different forms. Obviously, in the lead up to the Open, it was really tricky to try and generate interest. There was just the footage of the empty stadiums, the empty forecourt, the works going on around, sneaking into, well, not sneaking, it was open for the public. So we went into what became Kia Arena, and just trying to give a sense of, well, preparations are underway. We've tried long form episodes over 15 minutes. We've tried short form, anywhere between 8 to 12 minutes. We've tried the news bites, which were a maximum of 3 minutes, with largely just music and text. We've tried shorts in terms of TripAdvisor, the sights, sounds, summer of tennis. We tried those where they'd be barely 40 to 50 seconds long. We've tried episodes where we've tried to construct episodes that look into the players behind the stats, with Player Watch and the Spotlight series. And we even had one episode trying a phantom call of the last 3 games, or the last set of the Christopher O'Connell, I think it was round 2, his win before he fell in the 3rd round. I think largely with the exception of the Phantom Call. I don't think the Phantom Call really worked, to be honest. But I think largely what I realised was that it was really important to mix up the length of the episodes, because I know which are my favourites, and I won't say what those are right now, but I know which are my favourites. So, but I realised, and I know this for a fact, like people on this particular platform, for the visual nature of it, and the reason why people come is they come in, they don't stay long if they don't like what they're seeing. So we had to mix up, we deliberately mixed up the length of the episodes, the mix of the long form and the short form, the different styles, the different approaches. And it was really not because we didn't know what we were doing, we were just trying to find out what works and really really drill down into what works and repeat that, and get into a sort of a template style of production. Because look, to be honest, as a one-man band, as an independent media outlet, we don't need to generate much footage to make a lot of content, and that was the main thing. So I think overall the episodes have been really successful. There's some really encouraging stats with some surprising with others. We deliberately tried to steer clear of clickbait type episodes, although I will admit that trying to take advantage of different things as things evolved. Ash Barty's win, getting that up the very next morning as soon as possible, that short 90 seconds, we'll call that clickbait, but it makes sense to put that up there. And then trying to take advantage of the Special Ks getting into the final, trying to take advantage of that. But overall, I think basically our episode, the way we've constructed them and presented them, has been pretty successful overall. And that's just from the viewer side of things. The podcast side of things we'll leave for later on. So that's that topic wrapped up. Enjoy the sights, sounds, summer of Ash Barty, Australian Open Women's Singles Champion 2022.
A teenage upstart was trying to stop his more fancied countryman from winning his third consecutive Australian Open.
His first Grand Slam title, and he's won it in straight sets.
G'day, welcome back to the retrospective episode for this Australian Open Life. We tell stories, and our story is tennis, and today the story we're telling in this particular section is the style review of this Australian Open Life, the style of our programming and episodes. We just want to spend a little brief moments on the style of our presentation. Well, we tried scheduled programming, and aside from sticking pretty religiously to getting news bites up every day at 8:30, I don't think we were too successful in sticking to our scheduling. And for those who are really sharp, you'll notice that there was no episodes of the Hit Up during the Australian Open. And the reason for that is simply because we just could not keep up. We're running off a HP laptop. It's not the fastest thing in the world. It's not built for driving out content every day. It might take 3 hours to generate a 30-minute episode. It might take 20 to 30 minutes to generate a 5-minute episode. So there was no point. There was no point trying to get the Hit Out up. There was so much going on. The Hit Up will return, and for those sharp people who realise that the Hit Up is really just a verbal summary of the week's news bites. But one thing that became really clear once the Open started and things really started happening, and we had all this footage from Bendigo and Traralgon that we just couldn't get up and running, the important thing that we realised was to be flexible and adaptable. And the flexibility and adaptability, I think, we nailed. To be reactive to what was going on in a timely way as best as possible. So I think in that regards, the style pretty much held up. We tried to, there wasn't much point trying to stick to regular times if we weren't getting timely and flexible content episodes out there. So I think in that regards, we also give ourselves a pass mark, a fairly strong pass mark. But if you disagree, if there's anything you disagree with in this particular segment or anything in this episode that you feel that you want to contribute to, well, please do, because it's all about sharing knowledge, and your feedback helps drive the development of the episodes and what you see on the screen, because we'd rather be putting up something that people want to see and want to stay around for until the end of the episode, rather than just putting it up for our own amusement, which is a bit of a contradiction, because this episode is all about our own, what we want to do for this episode. But anyway, we'll wrap it up there for this particular segment. It's time to take a break from my rambling and enjoy the sights, sounds, summer of Ash Barty, 2022 WTA Women's Singles Champion. We'll be right back.
You just hear, you heard the singing, you know, and you heard like Thomas Johansson, blah, 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 you know, like this. It's the final against Sapien. And I came out and it was completely full, like blue and yellow.
Yeah, Hansen serving first. It's the championship final for 2002.
When I went out there, I was extremely nervous and tight, and I lost the first set.
That's the first set. He's broken the opening game. He's broken the Tokyo set by 6 games to 3 in a mere 33 minutes.
But then I managed to play better and better and better until I was up 6-1 in the tiebreak in the fourth set. Then the whole body just shut down.
G'day, welcome back to This Australian Open Life. We are having a retrospective. This episode is all about looking into the past. As I'm looking on the screen, we've reversed this footage and everyone is going backwards, and that's where we're heading, back to where we came from. I'm looking at this, looking at the boat going backwards on the Yarra, and we're looking at all this sunshine on the screen, and I'm looking out the window of our production studios, and the sun, I think Ash Barty took the sun with her. It is back to business as usual for Melbourne weather. The lead up was extremely, it's just no sun in November and October, and somehow the sun came back in late December. So apologies in advance for this particular segment of the retrospective episode. We tell stories, and our story is tennis, but the story of this segment is we're going to have an editorial review. So there's a few subsections within here, so I'm going to be banging on for a good while yet, so apologies there, and then we get down the end of page 1 and we'll flip over. But for the moment, in the editorial review, we're going to talk about the topic style, following the zeitgeist. Is it zeitgeist or zeitgeist? I can never remember. How to be relevant to an audience, and the effectiveness, and then the focus on features. So, topic style. Very early on, I realised that there's going to be so many times somebody from Guatemala, I'm joking, somebody from overseas is going to want to flip on an episode of This Australian Open Life in the first 3 weeks of December, and keep seeing the same scenes outside Melbourne Park, scaffolding, work site, cherry pickers, empty stadiums, not quite finished in their construction. So there had to be something else come up, and that's how we came up with the topic style. the Player Watch series. And it's a simple fact. You only have to open up a newspaper or flick on a TV of a sports show on ESPN or CNN or whatever local Australian show. Any newspaper, any back pages, you'd be lucky to find more than half a column devoted to tennis outside of a Grand Slam. So there's plenty of room for a independent media outlet such as Wise Words Media and Calumny Films to sneak into. And I haven't even mentioned the radio coverage of Grand Slams and tennis. There's plenty of room for everyone, and we found a niche in the top 100 to top 250 players, because that's where the heartache and the triumphs are. The margins are so thin, and we settled on looking at top 5 lists of players in the top 100 to top 250 and how they perform in terms of mental resilience around their breakpoint percentage on serve. And that was really well received. I think it was very well received. Lots of comments, lots of positive feedback generated. Now, the idea was that what we were going to do is that as the Australian Open drew closer and as the Australian Open started to get into gear, we were going to go through the top 50 to top 100 players, the same top 5 concept, and we were going to finish off the Player Watch series, the top 5. The idea was to finish off with a drilling into the same stats, breakpoint percentage on serve, and looking at this particular stat for each semi-finalist in the women's and the men's singles semi-finals. But it wasn't to be, but at the same time, there's nothing to stop us doing a review of those semi-finals as planned. So that might be something that we do later on. We really wanted to do with this Australian Open Life was make it stand out in a unique way, and it appeared to be a strategy worth following. Originally, we were just going to present footage by itself, but it didn't seem that would fly. There was only so many times you could put up footage with music. And then I started thinking, well, what happens if people get sick of listening to the same music? And then what happens if there's not enough variety in the music? And what happens if people actually are turned off by the music, even though some other people like it? So this is where we came to develop the radio style voiceover over the top of the footage that has come to be basically what is our style. And I think it works. And one of the reasons it works is it helps bring a lot more intimacy between the viewer and the episode, I think. I think the radio style works well because there's a certain amount of preparation and personality. Preparation in terms of lighting, the framing of the particular shot, that the presenter has to be switched on to put across their personality fairly well. Well, that's a lot of work. And that's just something that has been done in other projects, creative projects, that's been put out by Wise Words Media and Calumny Films. But for the tennis, the key thing was to get the footage of the players or the footage of the crowds, and let's face it, a talking head is going to take up a lot of the screen and cover up the action that's going on behind. And it goes without saying that sometimes you're going to cut away from the talking head anyway, and you're just going to be showing the footage. So why not just keep the voice, get rid of the talking head, and it gives so much more freedom, to be honest, when putting together the final episode that you see on the screen. And of course, it doesn't matter if the voice is not matching the footage that's on the screen at that particular time. That also gives a lot more flexibility, a lot more freedom in terms of production and final presentation. So that seems to work, and it seems to be a successful, unique selling point for us. That's why that. Now, I don't know what the right pronunciation for this is. Is it Zeitgeist or Zeitgeist or Zeitgeist? Following the Zeitgeist. So into the first week of the Australian Open, it became pretty apparent that there had to be some way, as a one-man band, to be really switched on to what was going on every 12 hours at the Australian Open. And there's only so much we can do to put out something fairly timely, so we had to be fairly judicious. So one thing I think we did really well, once we realised that we weren't going to be able to get up all the footage of the lead-up tournaments before the Australian Open, and trust me, I didn't lose any sleep over that, but it became apparent as Ash Barty was cutting, chopping her way, slashing her way through the field to the Australian Open final. It became apparent that, and I'll let you in on a little secret here, the whole idea of the Ash Barty Grand Slam Dream Team Cup was all about trying to latch on to somebody who was topical, had great following, and I'm going to confess it was a little bit clickbaity, but at the same time I feel like it also, given the Australian Open was all about celebrating 100 years of women's tennis at the Australian Open, it just seemed to make sense to celebrate all these number one players since 1975 that have held the world number one ranking for 100 weeks or more. And then we just latched on to Ash Barty that tiny bit more by getting ourselves down to Federation Square in Melbourne. We wanted to capture that live audience feeling, watching history unfolding in front of us, with the live reaction as she hit that winning shot, and that I think we succeeded at. Who would have thought in the first week of January, as we were babbling on about Nick Kyrgios and did he deserve a wild card, that he would go all the way, detouring through a COVID infection, mind you, that he couldn't take part in those lead-up tournaments and make the most of those wild cards that he was given. And who would have thought that he'd end up with an ATP Tour winning, title winning Thanasi Kokkinakis in the men's doubles final and all-Australian men's doubles final, the first time since 1980, and that the Special Ks would actually deliver the goods. So many times Nick Kyrgios has let the Australian sporting public down with his antics and his behaviour, and quite simply just being a total knob, as he described by his New Zealand opponent after their quarter-final win. And the zeitgeist worked for this Australian Open life. It really did. Now, we've still got 3 subtopics to go. To give you a break from my rambling, and apologies if you're getting sick of it, there's a little bit more to come. We've still got a little bit more to go. We've still got, we're only halfway through the editorial review segment. We'll take a break there so that you can wonder what the hell you're doing listening to this guy in Melbourne bang on about the Australian Open. But while you're wondering that, take a look at the sights, sounds, summer of Ash Barty, Australian women's singles champion of the Australian Open 2022. Okay, welcome back to the second part of the editorial review for this Australian Open Life. We're part way through our retrospective episode, just looking back on our Australian Open experience and how we presented the Australian Open to you, the viewer, you, the listener, and just getting a bit insular, getting a bit introspective, borderline introverted, just seeing for ourselves what we think worked. So from an editorial point of view, one thing that struck us in a big picture kind of way as we embarked on this experiment this year, we did have a crack last year, didn't quite go to anywhere near the levels that we generated this year, but how to be relevant to the audience, whether you're a viewer or a listener, how to be relevant to you, the audience, as a small-scale outlet. It's a really big question. With one camera, one set of hands, one voice. How are we going to be relevant in amongst this huge, internationally acclaimed event, competing against global organisations with sponsorship partners, digital coverage to the nth degree, multi-camera coverage right into the backcourts of the Australian Open, how to be relevant to you, the viewer. And we've sort of already covered this before, the way we came up with the Player Watch Spotlight series, looking into the top 100 to top 250 players, and also being able to really zero in on a particular subtopic is the best word I can think of. Look, I think, if I'm going to be honest, we just don't want to compete. We don't want to compete, but we want to have a unique voice. And I think that this Australian Open Life did manage to carve out a niche as a unique voice. We really appreciate the feedback that we got from some of our really dedicated listeners, that yes, we did present things in a way that have not been thought of or seen before, so that's a huge compliment. Thank you, really appreciate it. So, and I think also the success comes in terms of like, I'm not really big into stats here. We don't really use the analytics that come with platforms like these. We don't really go into too much detail, but let me just say this, that as of yesterday, while we've only got 28 subscribers, when we started we only had 6 when we really started getting serious, and we were sitting on 6 for so long, and all of a sudden we're 28. Now the reason 28 is a great figure is that yesterday we had a 4-week rolling figure of 78 returning people. So to those 50 people that aren't subscribers, I want to know why haven't you subscribed yet? But at the same time, we notice that you're coming back, looking at different things. So it's only just a matter of time that eventually we're going to get you over the line, or you might never come back, but somebody else will take your place. So there is growth there. And I think in that regards, are we relevant? Did we find out how to be relevant? I think the answer is yes. Are we relevant? I think yes. And I think has all the effort that's gone into producing all these episodes for the enjoyment of somebody in Melbourne, somebody in Australia, another person is in Israel, another person's in Russia, another person is in Belgium, and one person prefers the podcast to looking at on the screen. I think yes, with 100%, 200%, the answer is yes, we are relevant. Running into the next topic, and not long to go now, the effectiveness of the episodes. Well, the effectiveness in terms of, I was trying to think of the different episodes, the effectiveness, what do I mean by that? Well, the effectiveness being that are we offering enough variety? Is the variety of the episodes running off the back of being relevant? So I suppose the effectiveness of the news bites to generate interest by trying to be presenting something every day. in a summary style, yes, I think the news bites were incredibly effective, because the beauty of a news bite is you can just have an idea about one topic and it's all done and dusted in 3 minutes for the viewer. Only takes us maybe half an hour to put that together, and that's the beauty of having radio style, or just having an episode, a news bite with just text. It's incredibly easy, timely, and yeah, I think that is really effective. The sights, sounds, summer of tennis, that was always going to pop up somehow. It was a case of realising that not everybody wants to watch 3 minutes, not everybody wants to watch and listen to 8 minutes or 20 minutes or 40 minutes. So again, about variety, and just those little things that catch your eye. Maybe if you were there on the ground and you're walking through the grounds and something catches your eye and you just look to your right or your left, or your attention is caught briefly by something and you spend a few moments focusing on it and then you're on your way. That's the idea of the sights and sounds. They're just bites, aren't they? They're just visual bites and audio bites presented just to add that extra layer of being there, because this Australian Open Life is just trying to give a sense of, if you can't be there, what's the next best thing, the feeling of being there. So yeah, I think that was really effective. And finally, to finish off this longer segment within this retrospective episode, the focus on features, or the features focus, or the focus on features. And by that I mean focusing on wildcards, focusing on qualifying, focusing on the lead-up tournaments, just trying to apply a bit of focus to, yes, I suppose you could say we filmed a lot of footage. We've got a lot of footage in the archives, which you still have yet to see. It hasn't been delivered yet. But trying to bring some perspective, some order to what we were seeing on the ground, and then trying to make sense of it in some ordered fashion. So that's where, and again, that goes back to relevance and timeliness and adaptability. It seemed to me to be obvious that yes, even though we're a one-man band, we could definitely deliver on the topic of wild cards, because it's really interesting. I tell you, when I saw the name Gilles Simon pop up on the schedule on a piece of paper stuck to a window at the Traralgon International, I could not believe my eyes. So he was playing as a qualifier in a lead-up tournament to the Australian Open, and I thought that was an incredibly fortunate happenstance that I found myself able to film that bloke and bring him to you. So we'll wrap it up there. There's probably more I could bang on about when it comes to reviewing the editorial side of this Australian Open Life, but I'm guessing that by this stage you're well and truly sick of hearing me bang on, and the bad news is that I'm only done with the first page of my notes. Let's take a look at more sights, sounds, summer of Ash Barty, Australian Women's Open champion for 2022. G'day, welcome back to this Australian Open Life. This is the retrospective episode where we're going to look deep into ourselves and examine our conscience. Did we provide value for no money? Because let's face it, we're doing this for free. You don't have to pay. You just have to pay with your time. And that's why we appreciate you listening so much, because you're giving up your time when you could be doing something else. There's an opportunity cost. Have you heard that economic term? What's the opportunity cost of listening to this Australian Open Life, or spending 20 minutes of your own time watching our footage, well, the opportunity cost is that you could be doing something else. So we really appreciate your company. We know that you're listening from somewhere around the world. Now, what we've decided to do, we've made an executive split-second decision. This episode has probably gone on for a little bit too long. We're only just finished the first page of our notes. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to wrap up this episode here, and we're going to come back with fresh footage. Now, what you'll notice is playing in the background was footage that we took from Melbourne Park, going back somewhat through the lowlands of Birrarung Ma. And we took a left turn at Albuquerque, and we've walked back along the banks of the Yarra to the destination is Flinders St Station, because we want to demonstrate how bloody easy it is to get from Melbourne Park to the centre of the Melbourne CBD if you come to the Australian Open in the future. Now, so what we're going to do is we're going to come back, and we've decided to split this retrospective episode up into two parts because we don't want to bore you to sobs, and we want you to participate in a way that only viewers can, because we want your feedback. We want to know what worked for you. What did you think about the topics covered in this episode? Please let us know, because the only way that we can tell that these episodes, that this footage and this audio is working, is by the stats. And stats speak, but they don't have a voice. So use your voice. Tell us what you have liked, what you haven't liked, what you really liked, and we'll try to incorporate that into future episodes. Tell us, actually, one thing that we'd really like to know is, did you like it enough that you want to see this happen again? You want us to come back again next year with similar type stuff? And the reason we ask that is because it has taken, literally, it is virtually been a full-time job putting all this together since the 29th of November, literally a full-time job. You know, for the investment of time to pay off for this Australian Open life, we need to know that there's a demand there for us, because otherwise we're just pleasing ourselves, and that just conjures up all the wrong type of images. So we'll wrap it up there. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. You've been listening to me. I'm the bloke who walks. I like to bang on about tennis in this particular forum, and I also like to bang on about Melbourne. And this, you can take these episodes, this one and part 2 of the retrospective episode, you can take this as a love letter to Melbourne, to be quite honest, because yes, our focus is the Australian Open, but the Australian Open takes place in the best city in the world, voted the world's most livable city. Usually we're at number 1, most of the time when we're number 1 or number 2, and that's the other thing that we like sharing, is this this place that we get to call home, and the place that gets to host the Australian Open at Melbourne Park. Take a look at the sights, sounds, summer of Ash Barty, Australian Women's Singles Open Champion for 2022. And when we come back, we'll finish off with our usual ramble and outro with our favourite music. Don't go away, we'll be right back. And stay tuned for part 2 of the retrospective episode, which will wrap up with those final list of topics. Bye for now. So that about wraps it up. Hope you enjoyed that very rudimentary summary. I'm not going to pat myself on the back about the quality of this episode. It was really just about bringing together all those names, of all those players, and just letting you know that that's where things are at, because you know, we live in a digital age, but it's actually sometimes not that easy to find all this information. And the Christmas New Year's break, I mean, who wants to spend all their time looking at endless streams of apps and websites, and you know, so let us do all the hard work for you. That's what we're here for, and it's so very much appreciated that we're finding out that from most of the viewers, whether it's by comments or likes or subscriptions, that this Australian Open Life is hitting the mark for you. You've been listening to The Bloke Who Walks. This was our Wildcards episode of the Spotlight series. Have a great new year. Thanks for listening, and we'll chat to you very soon. Bye for now. Based in Melbourne, Australia, this Australian Open Life is produced by Wise Words Media and Calumny Films.